11 in verse 6. That'll be where we start. You might not have to turn there. We know this verse pretty well, I would suspect. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and he rewards those who seek him. If you haven't been boycotting all news or living in a hole, you probably heard about the Wall Street Journal poll that was conducted alongside University of Chicago. It was conducted between March the 1st and the 13th. It is an annual poll that they do every year and have, I think, since 1998. And the poll this year found that just 39% of Americans say that their religious faith is very important to them. When they compare that to when the poll was run in 1998, 62% of Americans reported that religion was important to them at that time, which means that there is a negative 23% difference over those 25 years. And the idea that only 39% of the people that we encounter on the street believe that religion has value, that religion is important, that religion makes a difference, is mind-boggling. That means that 6 out of every 10 people you meet sees no value to religion. A friend of mine, a man I've known for 35 years or more, maybe getting closer to 40 years now, posted, and he's a regular poster on social media, and he's always talking about God. He's always talking about the Bible. He posts a daily devotional every day on his site. He posted this the other day, and it caught my attention because it came so close to that poll. He said, "I was talking to a newfound friend, and it occurred to me after all my posts that some may not know where I stand with regards to my Jesus, my Lord, my God, my very best friend. I want to set the record straight. I have no religion, just a relationship with my God." And I think that that is the way that a lot of people think about things. They believe that they can have a relationship with God that is apart from religion, and they, look down negatively on religion and the idea of religion, particularly organized religion. This isn't entirely new. These ideas and sentiments have been around for a long time, probably a lot longer than this, but this is something that just came to my mind as I was thinking through the things that I wanted to talk about tonight. This is part of the lyrics from the song Imagine by John Lennon, which was published in 1971. And by the way, if you're familiar with that Wall Street Journal poll, you're going to notice that there's 2 aspects of that poll that are reflected in these lyrics, not just the one that I'm talking about. But he says, imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. Now I want you to notice that what he is suggesting here is that the idea of heaven and hell and religion are negatives, that they divide people, that they cause people to kill one another, that they cause death and destruction, and that life could only be good if we can get past these things. if we can put these things behind us and just live for today, we can be at peace and we can be unified. The end of all of this is these facts. In our society today, religion is not valuable to the people. It isn't important. It is not viewed as something that is needed. It is not viewed as something that is good. Now, the word religion doesn't appear very often in the Bible, but it does appear a few times. Now, the principles that religion are about are all throughout the Scriptures. But I want to limit myself to just the verses that directly use the term as we talk about these things and think about them tonight. The first example is from the book of Acts, chapter 25 and verse 19. What's going on here is Festus is discussing the dispute between Paul and the Jews with the other Roman officials as Paul is being tried, and a determination is trying to be made about what to do with him. And this is what the text says. Festus says, rather they had certain points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a certain Jesus who was dead, but whom Paul asserted to be alive. And so here's this Roman governor who is distinguishing between their religion and our religion. And he said, ultimately, look, what I found this whole dispute's about is nothing to do with the Roman law. It's really a discussion and a dispute among themselves about their own religion. And primarily it's because Paul just insists that this Jesus guy who died is alive again. And that's really the point of contention. And so we have the idea already presented very, very well with this first text where the word religion is used, that religion can be associated with God. Religion can also be associated not with God, because when he says their religion, he is distinguishing between the Romans' practice of religion. The next example is in the very next chapter of the book of Acts, chapter 26 and verse 5. Paul is now speaking to Agrippa. He is giving his defense, and he says this in verse 5 of chapter 26, they have known for a long time, if they're willing to testify, that according to the strictest party of our religion, I have lived as a Pharisee. So Paul is here talking about himself. He's talking about his fellow Jews. He is recognizing that the Jews practice religion and that he was a part of that, and he was a part of the most strict adherence to our religion, as it's put there. Now, the next time we have a reference to this term is in the book of Colossians. Colossians chapter 2 and verse 23. And the context is regarding regulations that arise from the thinking of men rather than those things coming from God, where men start putting prohibitions down about things that God hasn't prohibited. Don't taste this, don't touch this, don't do that, that are separate and apart from what's revealed. And it says in verse 23 of Colossians 2, these have indeed an appearance of wisdom in promoting, and here's our phrase, self-made religion. And so the Bible introduces that not all religion is divine religion. Not all religion is about God. Some religion is designed by ourselves, that we make it. They have an appearance of wisdom in promoting self-made religion and asceticism and severity to the body, but they are of no value in stopping the indulgence of the flesh. And then finally, James mentions it in James chapter 1, verses 26 and 27. This word in a couple of different forms appears. This is about biblical instruction regarding pure religion. And he says, if anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. And so we're introduced to the idea that some religions can be worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father. Now we've been introduced to a religion that is pure, that is not defiled, that is acceptable to God. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their affliction and to keep oneself unstained from the world. And I think the disconnect that exists today is that people don't really understand the word religion. And the word religion is used in a bunch of different ways, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. I want to begin my comment section in simply making this profession. Unlike my friend, I will stand up proudly and say I am religious. I'm unashamed to say that I'm religious. Religion is diverse in meaning in our language currently. Words are interesting creatures. I believe that words mean things, but definitions get changed and concepts in people's mind when they hear certain words get affected by songs that they listen to and things that people say and the things that they're confronted with. And when you hear for 30 years that religion is bad, but God is okay, then you start redefining the word religion and the idea of being religious. I went to a couple of dictionaries to get some modern dictionary definitions of the word religion. From the Collins Dictionary, it says this: religion is belief in a god or gods and the activities that are connected with this belief, such as praying or worshiping in a building, such as a church or a temple. I want you to notice that that language embraces the idea of organized institutional religion, that is the nature of the idea that's being put forth there. Webster's Dictionary defines it like this: a personal set or institutionalized system of religious attitudes, beliefs, and practices. My son very astutely pointed out that Webster made the very big mistake of trying to define the word religion with itself. Religious attitudes. You can't define a word with itself. But anyway, that reflects the difficulty that we actually have today in understanding what the word means. And so when we read it in those 5 verses, there's a lot of people who wouldn't understand what was being said, wouldn't understand what was being talked about, wouldn't understand what the point is. I think that most people think that religion is connected to organizations. I think that most people think that religion is connected to what we would call denominations, organized structural churches, particularly the high church idea, where there is an ecclesiastical set of laws and ecclesiastical courts and all sorts of control that is exercised in the name of religion. They think that it is a form of church, it is a form of synagogue or of a mosque, and that you don't practice religion. You go to a place to engage in religious activities. Now, I want you to understand there's a very important difference between thinking that you practice religion and you go to a place to engage in religion, and that's the only way that you can do it. The only way that religion is engaged is in the structure of this building, in this place, under the guise and control of this organization. I believe that because I hear things like this a lot when I talk to people in the community. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. And I think what they mean by that, based upon my continued conversations with them, is I believe in God, but I don't belong to any church. Or to be more frank, what they mean is I believe in God, but I don't go to church, is how they would probably put it. Religion as it's used in the Bible is more synonymous with our word piety than it is with church. Piety is a word that means that someone is devout, that they're dedicated, devoted to this system of beliefs, to this system of morals, this system of values. It's about the execution of one's values, about the execution of their morals, about the execution of their beliefs. religion is practiced every day in every encounter we have. Religion and worship are not synonyms. Religion is the active engagement of putting your values, your concept of morals and mores, and the aspects of your faith, our beliefs, into play. And so I have a belief, I have a value, and it says that this person is important to me, and so I treat them in a particular way because I believe that. That's what religion is. And that's what James was getting at in verse 27. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. When we understand that religion is the practice of someone's faith, then we can go to this next statement, which I would suggest is that everyone, at least in this understanding of the word religion, can be understood as religious. Even the people who claim to be non-religious are in fact religious, just like people who claim to not believe, not act in faith, actually do have a system of faith. It's a religion that may be self-made. It may be values that they decided for themselves. It may be beliefs that they raised in their own mind. It may be a self-made religion, as is talked about in Colossians chapter 2, but it's there. They have these values, they have these beliefs, and they use them to make decisions about where they're going to go and what they're going to do and what they're going to say, even if it is the belief that nobody matters, and therefore I can treat you poorly if I want to, and that's okay. That's how they morally justify the things that they do. That is, in fact, a practice of a self-made religion, a self-conceived idea about what humanity is, what life is about, how we should live, what we should do, how we should act. Religion is simply putting that into practice in this life. It may be that their religion is man-made religion. And I'm distinguishing that from church-made religion. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Man-made religion, I mean, is something that comes not necessarily from within my own self, but it does arise in the minds of men. And so it may be as a result of the things that I've studied. Maybe I have studied in biology or in chemistry, and I have decided some things based upon what I've learned in that field, and I use that as a basis for developing my morals and values and how I behave and what I think about myself and how I treat people and what matters and what doesn't matter. That is the practice of a religion. It may be that it is church-made, that there is an organization somewhere that sets forth a declaration of this is what we believe, and this is what you must do, and this is how it works. And you think about, when I talk about this, think particularly about highly organized, high church situations. A lot of people don't realize this, but a lot of these denominations do actually have what's called ecclesiastical courts. And when there are disputes about these things, they hold trials and make determinations and decisions about the application of these principles of faith that are set forth not from the heart of the individual, based upon their study of the Word of God, but that are set forth from those that control the church, the denomination, the group, the sect, whatever you want to call it. There are, in fact, religions that I believe are government-made, that are set forth to people, and people appreciate them, and they become enamored by the government, and they love the government to the point that they will do anything that they are told, and that is and becomes their religion. By definition, that's what it becomes. Maybe their religion isn't self-made religion Maybe their religion isn't man-made religion. Maybe it isn't government-made religion. Maybe it's biblically made. Maybe they're like those of Thessalonica. And when people talk to them about God and talk to them about what God has said and talk to them about what it means and talk to them about how it should be practiced, they then search the scriptures and make determinations about whether things are true or not. And their religion arises from the Bible. But any life that is lived is based on a set of values, wherever they arise from. And that is a person's religion. Whatever they hold dear and valuable enough to control how they think and act, whether it's themselves, some other group of men, in some other way, it doesn't matter, or the Word of God, that becomes their religion. It may be worthless. It may be useful. It may be useful in life and worthless after this life is over. It may be worthless in life, but everything after this life is over. And I think that is certainly what's suggested by the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 15, is that there's not a whole lot of value in being a Christian in this life. If we've hoped in this life in Christ, we're of all men to be most pitied, he said. So maybe it is that the religion is useful, but it's not useful in the here and now. In fact, it clearly wasn't useful for Paul. Paul lost his position. He lost the respect of his peers. And the people who had once looked at him as a future leader among them turned around and became the people who were pursuing him and seeking to kill him. And that is what becoming a Christian and adopting the religion of Christ brought him in this life. But what he said about that is, I count all that past stuff is but rubbish for the surpassing knowledge of knowing Christ. In other words, there's something better. There's something better for me to gain from this than something in this life. Religion is, simply put, the practice of what we believe. A Christian's religion is the practice of the principles and doctrines of Jesus as we understand them. A Christian's religion isn't the Bible. It arises from the Bible. A Christian's religion isn't the study of the Bible. It's informed by the things that we learn in the study of the Bible. It's the way that we practice the things that we've learned in the Bible. Religion is the how of applying the principles and morals that we hold to ourselves and applying those things to how we treat others in the world and what we do. We need to make certain that our religion is the exercise of the faith which was once for all delivered to the saints, as it's talked about in Jude verse 3, and not something that we create in our own mind. The church at Corinth had some issues among it because they had brought in their own ideas about certain things. Clearly, the church at Colossae had some people who had problems with that, and he said, hey, these guys, they have some ideas that may be great for promoting self-made religion, but they're useless in helping someone control the desires of their flesh and being found pleasing to God. So we need to make certain that what we exercise as our religion is the faith. And, well, I won't get ahead of myself. We need to make certain that we don't deceive ourselves into believing that we practice true and undefiled religion if we don't actually practice true and undefiled religion. And there are a lot of people who believe that their religion is good but who don't practice true and undefiled religion as is set forth from God. And Jesus speaks about those people, and he says that many on the day of judgment will say to him, hey, we did this, and we did this, and we did this in your name. And he said, I never knew you. You weren't in fellowship with me. We need to make certain that that is not what describes us. I'm going to kind of throw this in. It just came to mind. It's something that was actually said to me this morning. One of the members of the congregation here was walking out the back door, and I was speaking to him as he left. And he said, you know, you never know when you might die. He said, my great-granddaughter, 23 years old, went to a restaurant to eat one day and just fell over dead. 23 years old. He's right. You can think you're perfectly healthy one day and the next day find out that you're not. That's why it's important for us not to deceive ourselves about these things. For us to be certain. Not all religion is undefiled. But just because there is defiled religion out there, we need to be very careful not to attack religion en masse. And that's what's going on, I think, in the world today, is because there is defiled religion, and so clearly and obviously defiled religion out there. People professing to be Christians doing terrible things, ruinous things to others. That all of a sudden, all religion is bad and all religion is worthless. Religion can arise from God. Religion can arise from the Word of God. It can be good, and it does involve organized worship. Divine, godly, pure religion does involve organized worship performed, assembled with His people. You can't have true religion without that. But that's not all of it. Just because I'm here in this place doing these things doesn't mean that I've practiced true and undefiled religion. When I walk out that door and I spend the rest of my week in this world, I still need to practice true and undefiled religion in all that I do and say. Don't accept the lie that religion is worthless. And I say that because it seems that 61% of our society has accepted that. %61%. And that means there's probably people sitting in this room tonight who have been influenced by the idea that religion is bad. Religion is not bad. Not if it comes from God. Not if it's informed by God. Not if it comes from a pure heart. Not if it's practiced in its pure and undefiled form. We need to put into practice the things that we've been taught in the Word of God. We need to treat other people right. We need to live moral and upright, pure lives. All of that is defined as pure religion, undefiled religion. I want to leave this discussion looking at James chapter 1, verses 26 and 27 again. And I want you to notice what he says. And the epistle of James is probably one of the most practical epistles in the Bible. There's not a whole lot of theology in it. There's not a whole lot of doctrine in it. It's all about applying, about living, about doing. If anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. So if I walk out that door and I live the rest of my week and I don't control my speech, I don't care what I say, I don't worry about whether I lie to someone, I don't worry about the deceit that comes from my mouth, I don't worry about whether or not it's pure speech that elevates and gives grace to those who hear me. I use words that harm and hurt and are designed maybe even to harm and hurt others. I utter speech not from love but out of hate. If I think I'm religious and then I walk out there with an unbridled tongue that is not disciplined by God, this person's religion is worthless. If I think I'm religious and I deceive my own heart about the source of my religion or the reason why I do something, or I justify behavior, even though I know it's not really good. But in these circumstances with this person, it's okay. This person deserves it. I'm all right for doing this thing because this person did this over here, and so now that makes this, ordinarily this wouldn't be a nice thing to do, but if I deceive myself that way and live an unchaste life, and don't think that people don't do it, people do it every day. The most obvious example is the number of people who commit fornication and justify it by saying, well, they cheated on me first. It doesn't make it okay for me to cheat on anyone. It doesn't make it okay for me to disregard the laws of God. It doesn't make it okay for me to disregard or cease to love and show love for those around me. This person hated me first. It doesn't make it okay for me to hate them. This person said this to me first. You hear this on every schoolyard recess ground in the world. He started it. So, if I think I'm religious and I deceive myself into believing that it's okay for me to do those things because this person's religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, and there's two aspects to this that are not supposed, this is not supposed to be exhaustive. This is not covering all the realm of what really, this is covering the two areas in which religion is controlled: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. To visit orphans and widows in their affliction, the most vulnerable people on this earth, the people who don't have anyone to care for them and to love them and to keep them. The woman whose spouse has died and has now been left alone. The child who has lost their parents. If I can't use my life to help them in their distress, I'm not practicing God's religion. I'm not practicing true religion. I'm not practicing undefiled religion. If I put myself in front of the weakest, ain't nothing true about my religion. And then this one, to keep oneself unstained by the world. Boy, that's a mouthful. To live morally, righteously, uprightly, godly, to not sin, to not transgress the law of God, to not justify what I want to do, but instead discipline myself, make myself a slave for righteousness' sake. Paul talks about that a lot. We've been set free from sin, but that doesn't mean that we're not under bondage. We're under bondage to God, to righteousness, to doing those things which are good, to keep ourselves unstained. Christ died to wash me clean. John spoke about it this morning when he was leading the table, about all that Jesus went through. And really grasping, listen, the whole ordeal was miserable. The beating that he took, we can't even truly appreciate. We've never seen a beating like that. We've certainly never taken a beating like that. And by the way, I've taken a few beatings in my life, but none like that. The mocking, the mistreatment, the jeering, the being nailed to the cross, the dying. You know, when that happens to me, it's going to be because I can't stop it. When I die, it's going to be because I can't stop it from happening. If I was to be beaten like that, treated like that, nailed to a cross, it would be because it was out of my power to keep it from happening. But do you realize that Jesus could have stopped it at any moment? He didn't have to suffer, but he did, so that my blemishes could be washed away, so that I could be made clean. He says, true and undefiled religion is to keep myself unspotted now, to not go back to the vomit, as Peter put it, to not go back and wallow in the mire of this world. People talk about religion not being any good. Listen, the religion of Christ is the only religion I know that tells you not only to love your family, not only to love your brethren, not only to love your country, but to love the people who hate you and the people who mistreat you and your enemies, to love them still the same. It is the only system that says to you, it doesn't matter what someone does to you, what someone says to you, you should be kind to them, you should speak loving words to them, and you should help them. It is the only system that says it doesn't matter how oppressive your government is. They've been given certain authority by God, and you need to respect that authority and live by it unless they ask you to do something contrary to what God has commanded. Otherwise, you be the best citizen that you can be. How anybody could conclude that such a religion is bad and not important and is unhelpful is beyond me. Why there are such great enemies against it, I'll never understand. But from the day it was preached, there has always been enemies. Always been enemies to the gospel, and always been enemies to those who practice the gospel. And there has always been an effort by Satan to convince everyone that it's worthless, that it's not important, that it doesn't help, and that you can just do whatever you want to do and enjoy life. That's a devil's lie. And it would seem that we have come to a point where most of our friends and most of our family, most of our fellow citizens have believed. And so you know what our job becomes? To exemplify true and undefiled religion. So that they see the value. So that they see the change. So that they see that I'm no longer a liar, that I'm no longer a cheat, that I'm no longer an alcoholic, that I'm no longer a brawler. So they see I'm no longer a hater. So they see I'm no longer a fornicator, that I'm no longer walking through life with an unbridled tongue, saying anything that I want to without a care in the world of who's hurt by it or what damage that it does. No, they see a changed person. And a person that by knowing them, their life has just gotten better because there's someone who is seeking to help and not seeking to harm. That's true in undefiled religion. To visit those who are under distress with the aid that they need and to live righteously and godly through our lives. May we never fall into that category of believing that somehow religion can be separated from God, that religion can be separated from righteousness, that religion can be separated from a relationship with God, that religion can be separated from living at all. We will practice our lives. In our lives, values and the morals and the things that we hold, and we will be known by our fruits. That's what Jesus taught. You will know them by their fruits. And you know what that fruit is? Their religion. You'll know whether they are of God or whether they're of the devil. You'll know who they are. Let us never fall prey to that belief and start thinking that we can just go out there and have a relationship with God without needing to be worried and burdened with following His laws or being associated with His church or doing the work that He's commanded for us to do in this world or observing His worship on a regular basis. I don't worry about church. I'm spiritual. God understands me. We have an understanding. That's a lie of the devil. I don't want to imagine a world with no religion. I tell you what I want to imagine, a world of pure and undefiled religion, of true unity among believers. Because what Jesus prayed is when the world sees that, then the world will know that He was sent by God. John 17. Lessons yours.